Ladies and gentlemen,
welcome to the Big Buck Legends One-on-One Podcast.
All right, I think all the levels are set.
go. Let's go.
Here's your host, Jason Joy.
Well, one of the great honors that I get to have in doing our Big Buck Legends 101 podcast here on Big Buck Country 101.5 is obviously a chance to talk to the legends. And I want to talk to this lady for a long, long time. She has got a new book out along with Ken Abraham. It's Nancy Jones who is joining us now. And Nancy, like I said, I have been wanting to catch up with you for a long, long time. And I know you had some health issues recently that you battled through. You're still here kicking. You put out a great book, and you're still going strong. It's great to hear from you.
Well, I have kind of a joke about that because, you don't know, but I will tell you, I had COVID really, really, really bad, and I did actually really die. So it's in my book how God brought me back, but I've been joking about it. I said, God looked up there, and he said, George, I think Nancy's coming. And he went, oh, my God, please don't bring her back here yet. I don't want to see Nancy right now. I had 32 years with her.
Not ready for him.
Oh, Lord. And I told that one time to Hazel, Charlie Daniels' widow, and she said, don't you say that, Nancy. George loved you. I said, Hazel, it's just a joke.
And you, Nancy, you teamed up with Ken, and you came out with the book Plain Possum, and it's about the story and the life of, we know the story and the life of George Jones, but through you, over those 30-plus years of you guys being together, that's where you take the stance on this book and reliving the stories, the good and the bad with it. Let's go back to the early parts of things with George, and we all know the story, and obviously battled alcohol and drugs, and I went back and I did a lot of research on this and not realizing how, they always say it starts off in the family dynamics on things a lot of times. And George was actually kind of born into this type of, into that life back many moons ago when he was born. Heck, he was even dropped when he was a baby too. So, but he had battled the same thing with his dad back then too. So George did not have the easiest of life growing up.
No, because when the doctor dropped him, he weighed 12 pounds, and when the doctor dropped him, he broke his arm.
Wow.
He's like, wow. He was doomed right after he was born. But, God's good, and we turned him around and had some good memories and a good life with him after we got all of the demons out of him.
Yeah, and a lot of that happened, obviously it started before you guys got together, and I know he attributed a lot of his life being saved, not only by the grace of God, but also bringing the grace of God and bringing you into his life. Take folks back on how you guys got together.
A girlfriend of mine was dating one of his managers, and she begged me to go to New York to meet him, and I'm like, man, I am not into country music. I love Creedence Clearwater. Man, I could clean everybody's house in Shreveport, Louisiana if I put Creedence Clearwater on. But she kept begging and begging and begging, and finally I said, okay, I'm going, but I'm not going to like it. But once I got there and really listened to this man singing on the stage and the way he would form his words and it comes out of his mouth, I feel like, God, how is he doing that? But then we just ended up talking all night long, and the next day, 2 days later, it was time for me to go home. And I told him, I said, I got to go back to work. And he was like, no, you can't leave me. And he told me things that I didn't even think this could happen to anybody. And so he really just built his guts and just told me everything. And I was just shocked at how the people could live like this. So when I got ready to go home, he said, you're not going? I said, oh, yeah, I got 2 girls, and I got to go back to work. So I flew commercial from New York, took all day, changing planes, doing this and that. And by the time I landed and got home, there was this strange car in my driveway, and he went and got a commercial flight, chartered a plane, and also rented him a car and were sitting in my driveway when I got home. And I guess you can say the rest is history.
That's a great story to be able to do that and surprise you with it, because people realizing the fact that you both had lives before you got together. I mean, George obviously with Tammy was married before that too. You were married, you had 2 kids, and so you had to bring your families together back then.
Yeah, I was already divorced whenever we got together, but it doesn't matter. I had 2 kids and an ex-husband, and everything was just, very unusual. I think God put us together. I mean, I know He did, and it was good for George and also good for me.
Yeah. It sounded like definitely indeed, and you needed 2 souls to come together to make it, but it wasn't the easiest of things. Now, before you met George, did you know about George? You said
No.
you were a CCR fan, you love that style of music, so you had no idea who this George Jones guy was.
Did not know anything about country music, did not know anything about George Jones.
Wow. So you didn't know the stories yet. That was the famous stories about George back then.
No, but it didn't take me long to learn them.
Nancy Jones here with us, Ken Abraham. They got a new book out called Playing Possum, The Memories of George Jones. And, and Ken, we're going to bring Ken in here in just a moment here. But, Nancy, I did want to ask you on some things with George. And you guys talked about when you got together. And obviously, and I know I'm not bringing up anything that folks don't know because it's in the book about it, but it was a rocky time there when George was battling alcohol and drugs and other things as well, and it was a rocky time for you two. And when most women might say, "The heck with this guy! I'm getting my kids. I'm getting out of here and going." You saw something deep inside with George that you said, "You know what? We're going to stick this out and make it right."
Well, I saw a very nice, sweet, loving man when he wasn't drunk or snorting cocaine, and something I never in my life even seen. I didn't even know what marijuana looked like. But, I learned really fast, and I knew that this guy, he had Jesus in him. He really did. He was raised Pentecostal, and if you wanted to calm George down, all you had to do was start talking about God and his mom. He loved his mom. And I'm thinking, anybody that I can calm down as drunk and as high as he is, there has to be a goodness in there. And it was. I mean, you had to chase those demons out. And if I would have given up on George, he would have been gone a long time ago.
I was going to say, because what year did you guys get together?
We got together in, we got married in 83.
Yeah.
So it would have been November of 81. So,
and before that, he was almost at rock bottom when it came to what he was battling, the alcohol and the demons that were in him. He was homeless, living out of his car at one time, and was broke and everything else. And, you came into his life, I guess, at the same time when some of his friends kind of helped him to try to get out of the hole that he was in, right?
Yeah, Waylon and Johnny Cash. And, they were such great friends of George. And Johnny Cash was such a sweet man. He never called George George. It was Little Pal. Him and June, they always talked about, "Little Pal, we're praying for you. Little Pal, you got to straighten up." And Waylon, he was just adorable. I loved Waylon. And Waylon would always say, "Man, if I had somebody sweet as Nancy Jones, I know I'd straighten up." And, George would listen to him. But as soon as he got, I would say, with people that didn't care, just, "Here, George, here's a drink. Here, George, here's some Coke." I had to get him away from those kind of people and get him right with God. And I did. I mean, I worked really, really hard, and I knew it was a man worth saving.
Ken Abraham is also with us, along with Nancy Jones. And Ken, when you heard these stories and started putting these things from, pen to paper, like we always like to say, what was going through your mind in hearing these things?
I was surprised, Jason. I was surprised at just how honest Nancy Jones is. I mean, a lot of people, especially celebrity-type people, they don't want all the truth out there. They want to kind of bend the truth the way they want it to make themselves look better, and everything's wonderful and all that. Nancy was just so honest. She would talk about the good things that she and George had, but she was also willing, especially in this book, to talk about some of the tough times. And I work with a lot of people, and not everybody's that honest. They want to sugarcoat some things. Nancy is not going to sugarcoat anything. She's going to tell you the truth. So that was surprising, and it was refreshing to me.
Did you, when you were hearing the stories from Nancy, and like you said, that's the great thing about it is the honesty, and she's not going to sugarcoat anything. This is what happened and how it was, but this is how it finished out. This is how it came in on the backside of it. Were you listening to some of these stories going, how did you stay with this? I mean, what was that power that was in you that made you stay with this?
Oh, absolutely, especially nowadays, because so many people say, hey, the first time he raises his fist to you, or the first time he says this to you or something, you're gone. And that's true for most people. But Nancy I honestly believe it was almost a divine mandate that she's going to stay with this man and help him to get through these things and come out on the other side. Not everybody can do that. Nancy Jones is certainly not the ordinary person. She's got a great faith, but she also has that intestinal fortitude. I tell you what, don't mess with Nancy, And I think George learned that a few times as well. We have some funny stories in the book too. One of my favorites is when George was honking the horn at her and trying to get her to hurry up and go because he wanted to go eat. And Nancy came out of the bathroom and well, Nancy, you go ahead and tell Jason. I don't know what you want to say.
Okay. I got so tired. Every time he was ready to go, he jumps out of bed, put his baseball cap on, put his clothes on. Let's go. Well, some women have to really go in there and comb your hair and put a little makeup on, or you're going to scare everybody. So he's out there honking his horn. Well, I just had enough of it. So I go out there with my bra and panties on. I get in the car. I go past my house. I passed my housekeeper right there, and she said, "Oh, Miss Nancy, you can't go out there like that." I'm like, "Oh, yes, I am. I've had it." I go and get in the car with just my bra and panties on, and he backs out of the driveway, not looking at me because he's mad because it took me too long to get out. He backs out of the garage, and we have a very long driveway, so I'm hoping, oh my God, I hope he doesn't go through those gates. Well, he did. And as we got at the end of the road there on the highway part to get on the main highway, down the street there and on the main highway, he looked over and went, "Oh my God, go get you some clothes on." I'm like, "Yeah, and you quit honking too." So went back and got dressed, and then for days he laughed about that, but I was scared to death. He was going to really take me to Cracker Barrel.
With no clue. They had a great relationship, Jason. That was the fun part about this book too. Is they could laugh together, and there are some great stories about just the fact that they just had so much fun together. And a lot of people talk about all the hard times with George and the hard things that Nancy helped him get through, but he was just a great guy. And I live close by to where Nancy lives, and there are people right around my neighborhood that could tell you stories about when they were over at Cracker Barrel, and they'd hear somebody laughing so much and enjoying so much, they look around the corner, and there's Nancy Jones and George Jones just having a hoot and holler time right there at Cracker
Barrel. Yeah, we did.
How was George as you talked about him as a husband? How was he as a father? Because you guys, you had to integrate your families. You had a couple of kids. He had his kids too. How did the integration with the family go?
Well, we had I had two of my daughters that lived. We called it the compound. We had over 100 acres there, so they had built their homes there. And then George's oldest daughter, Susan, which is to this day my best friend and always has been. She's just adorable. I love her. She's got the mannerism of her father. So we built her a house there. So she lived on the compound and got along great. She had two kids, Jennifer and Michael, and they were just wonderful, wonderful grandkids. And then my kids and had grandkids out there, and he was just the loving person that loved the kids, always spoiled them rotten. But as far as his other kids, he was not close to any of them at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, this was his own little family, I guess, that he built together right out there in the compound.
That's all. Any of the kids or grandkids got the music bug too?
No, thank God.
That's like, I do a lot of work with NASCAR and racing, and you talk to some of the wives up there, and then they have a child. I said, are they getting that bug for racing? And they say the same thing. Thank God, no. He wants to play golf, and he's like, they're going to push him that way.
Safer.
Nancy Jones, Ken Abraham is here with us. The book is called Playing Possum, and it's my memories with George Jones. And Nancy, let's fast forward a little bit here through things. 1999. We got to go March 6, 1999. Significance in the aspect of kind of bringing everything together in George's life. He was involved in a very serious accident there in Nashville, and I was reading the accounts of it and the fact that he was trying to play something on a phone, was fiddling around with it, couldn't get the sound right or whatever, and eventually ran it into the side of a bridge. He got messed up pretty good in this wreck, but you say that kind of brought your husband back. Tell folks about that.
Well, he had the song Choices out, and he wanted to play it for our daughter Adina, and he was saying, "Yeah, you got to listen to the song, man. I love this song. You got to hear it." Well, we had Alexis, and if you were, who's on the speakerphone in the car, if you were talking on that, it would automatically cut your music off.
The volume,
Yeah, so he was got mad and kept saying, "I don't know what's wrong with this. I can't get it to play. You got to hear this song. You got to hear it. I'm just so proud of Choices." Well, he was getting angry and mad, and instead of looking at what he was supposed to be looking at, called the road, he was beating the dash trying to get that song back on, and he hit the bridge. And I think that was God's way of saying, you know what, it's about time for you to straighten up, man. And he had started drinking early that morning. And I told him, if you keep this up today, I just don't know. I'm getting older. I just don't know if I can stay up with this anymore. I'm just so disgusted with you. Thinking, okay, he'll put that bottle down and that's it. Well, he came back in the house and he said, "Honey, if you would just hang in here with me," he said, "I'm going to tell you, I went out in the back pasture and I prayed to God to hit me in the head with a sledgehammer." He said, and let me just ride around a little bit and I'll be right back. I said, okay. Well, he hit him at the bridge. That was about as hard as a sledgehammer. And that's the thing that I know then that was going to straighten up George, because he died in the helicopter to the hospital.
Wow.
And, God saved him, and he saved him for a reason, and that is, okay, George, I don't want you going to hell and heaven or whatever drinking. I just don't want that. And that's what I think that God did, is he saved this man to live a little longer so he could get closer to him.
And he never took another drink, right?
Never took another drink.
Never smoked a cigarette.
Nope.
Jason, he'd been smoking cigarettes longer than he'd been drinking.
Wow.
He was 10 years old.
But when he hit that bridge, it turned him around in a real positive way, and George had a different life after that.
Yeah, because you said in the book, from 1999 to 2013, I got my husband back, a husband I should have had to begin with, a man who trusted God with his strengths and his weaknesses, making him the strongest man I've ever known. Alas, George Jones was a man who wanted to live. And from 1999 to 2013, when he passed away at 81, he lived a life with you. It sounded like you guys were on a nonstop honeymoon from that point on.
Exactly.
Now, what was the prayer? Did he say talking to God? Did he say something to God that, get me through this and I'll never do it again? Was that before the accident, or was that after he got home from the accident?
After the accident, and George lost so much weight, and he was so pitiful looking from that wreck. And so the doctor told me, you got to keep him walking and keeping him exercising. And so that day we were walking and out at the farm, and there had a little bridge right there on the farm. And so I was walking with him, and he said, I've got to rest. He said, I'm just so tired. I said, well, sit down, sit down. So he sat down on that little bridge there, and he said, honey, you're going to have to go get the golf cart. I don't think I can make you back up that hill. I said, okay. So as I was walking off to get the golf cart, I heard him say, God, if you get me through this, I will be the best husband she's ever had. I will never, ever drink again, smoke again. I will be the man that you want me to be. And all the times that I have ever heard him tell me, I'm going to quit tomorrow, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, and I never believed him. But when he said this and I heard him praying to God, I knew then that my prayers had been answered and I was getting a good man.
Yeah, it definitely, indeed, and he still put out great music after that too. And what I love too, and the fact that he always has been a proponent of keeping traditional country music in the realm of what he grew up, what he loved playing, and he worked with young artists in those latter years of his life to keep that legacy of that music alive. With what, Randy Travis and Alan Jackson, who's a legend himself too, and he worked with so many different people.
That's right.
He did, and he loved Alan Jackson, and he used to always say Randy Travis is the one that brought country music back. He's going to save us. I've never seen anybody love country music like George Jones and gospel music. But when he would sing gospel music, oh, my God, it was like put chills up and down your spine because he just really would get into it, but loved country music.
I was going to say, because that was one of his last projects that he did was a gospel album, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. There was some good stuff on that one. I do remember that. And I remember it vividly, Nancy, when he passed away here at the radio station. And I remember we immediately flipped the rest of the day and played all of George's music, the entire library that we had. And we worked with our friends at WSM Radio down in Nashville. They let us pick up their feed, and we broadcast the memorial service and the funeral services here on our radio station across the Mid-Ohio Valley, too. So I remember back when that day happened, because it broke my heart, honestly. I loved George Jones growing up as a kid. My dad was a real country music lover. My first concert, I think, was a Willie Nelson concert. And when I was a little kid, and I always joke around with folks that I probably still felt the effects of that concert many, many years later as a kid. But no, that's another story. But it broke my heart that day. But I knew he was at peace, and what he went through in the hard life. And I was talking to folks here around the station. It's almost like George Jones was like a cat. He got 9 lives. He used all those 9 lives, didn't he, throughout his years?
Right.
Yeah, he did. But he was ready, though. That was the other thing, Jason. I mean, the story in the hospital there where he was unconscious and almost comatose there for a while those last couple of days. And then he woke up suddenly. And Nancy, you want to tell?
Yeah, it was just before he passed. And he had not been talking at all. And then all of a sudden, with that deep voice of his that anybody would recognize, he said, well, hello there. He said, I've been looking for you. My name is George Jones. And then he was gone. So I know he was talking to God.
Wow. I got chills.
But that would be George. That would be his mannerism of introducing himself to God. Like God already knows who you are. But that would have definitely been George. Yeah.
And he's up there playing music with Waylon and Johnny and all of them now, right?
Heavenly Band, yeah.
That'd be a heck of a band to be able to listen to. We could do this a whole lot longer, guys. I love doing this conversation. Like I said, I've been wanting to do this for a long time because there's so much history with George that, even well before, I never realized, White Lightning. Love White Lightning. I do the whistle, kind of sing along with it every single time. I did not realize the Big Bopper wrote that song. And George, I didn't realize the relationship that was there with George and not being on the plane with Patsy Cline. And there's so many other things there.
And that's in the book.
Yeah.
I mean, the Patsy Cline thing is going to blow your mind, but that is definitely in the book, and I think they will definitely enjoy that. And they can go on Amazon and get the book.
Yeah.
It's just it's been a wonderful experience with George, also very spiritual book, and I think that they will enjoy it. And like I said, I didn't sugarcoat anything. I thought it was time to get this off my chest since I died, and I think God talked to me to put this book out, and that's why the book's out there.
And the old story, and it's a true story about him riding the tractor down from the house to the bar. And our good buddy, I know you know Rodney Crowell real well. And one thing I love about Rodney, he's a heck of a great artist, and he painted that picture with him riding that tractor. And if I'm not mistaken, it was at the museum for a long time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yep. I keep telling Rodney I need to get a copy of that from him. I would love to have that hanging up in my man cave. So, hey, Nancy, go ahead.
We straightened out details on that, Jason. There were a couple of mistakes that have been kind of passed down from one group to another about that lawnmower event.
Huh?
So Nancy wanted to get the whole story out there the way it really happened this time. So, but it did happen.
Yeah.
It just wasn't quite the way some people tell it.
But it was great to see it with Vince Gill's video. You know, it was it made light of it, obviously, which was great. And and the later in life, and what I loved too before George's passing was seeing him involved in other people's music. You know, in significant parts. I know with Aaron Lewis and all these other guys too that he was able to do some things with.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right.
It is true.
And they all looked hero. That was a wonderful thing. And working with Nancy, everybody I talked to and talked about George, every one of them looked at George as that's the kind of country music artist I want to be. And every one of them, they just have that adoration of George Jones still to this day.
Oh yeah, and real last thing I got to bring up here, and I think it's coming out in October if I'm not mistaken. Everybody got together not too long ago down in Alabama. What was it? 32 country artists got together. Is that right, Nancy? Is that what's coming out here in October? The big concert?
That was in Huntsville, Alabama.
Huntsville, yeah. But it's coming out to movie theaters in October, which I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, it's a great show, Jason, and 32 artists all singing George Jones songs. It was a wonderful night, and anybody gets a chance to see that on actually PBS covered it, and they had it on PBS for one of their features.
Yeah.
So it's out. And, you don't want to miss it. It was just a fantastic night. 32 great country music artists singing George Jones songs. Usually you get a show like that and they'll sing their own songs. Mm-hmm. Not this time. They sang George Jones songs. Everybody from Brad Paisley to Winona. Who all was there, Nancy? It was a wonderful night.
Well, we had Jelly Roll.
Jelly Roll, yeah. That's right. Singing the George Jones song.
He was a nervous wreck.
Was he really?
Yeah.
That's everybody's new favorite now is Jelly Roll.
Yeah.
I love his attitude. He's got a great attitude. Of course, he's got a storied past that I know at some point in his career, because he's got a long career ahead of him, is going to be documented just like you guys did here with George's life with playing Possum. So, hey, both you all, thank you all very much. Miss Nancy, you're one of the strongest women I know, and you continue in. You battled your own health issues, like you said, with COVID, and you came out, and you may not have the big lung capacity you used to have, but you're still going strong at it.
Oh, thank you so much. You are so wonderful.
All right, Nancy Jones, Ken Abraham, God bless you both. Thank you all very much. Folks, pick up the book, Playing Possum. You can get it at Amazon and any other place where you can find all your books. I'm telling you want to get it. I've actually got it. It's on its way to me now. I've read enough segments of this book that I want to see the whole thing. So, guys, congratulations on the book. Thank you for telling the story and keeping George's legacy alive.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it, folks. Like I said, I've been wanting to do that one for a long, long time. That is Nancy Jones, Ken Abraham. The book is called Playing Possum. It is my memories of George Jones as told by Nancy. And I tell you what, folks, she did not leave anything. She didn't hold the punches back on this one. She told everything that was the life, the legacy of George Jones. You need to pick it up. So, and of course, thank you all for always checking in with us here on our Big Buck Legends One-on-One podcast. Don't forget to share the show, tell your friends about it, and download us every week at all your favorite podcasting outlets and at BigBuck1015.com. God blessings to all of you. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, son, the party's over.
This has been a Big Buck Legends One-on-One podcast.
Thank you for checking us out. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast.
Okay, I need to tell you two things.
A production of Kindred Digital in association with Toy Production Services. All rights reserved. Big Buck Country 1015.